Rare and dangerous events are occurring in Kamchatka that have horrified most scientists around the world. The sixth strongest earthquake in human history has awakened what had been sleeping for centuries. 7 volcanoes in Kamchatka have awakened simultaneously. A volcano that had been silent since the 15th century has thrown a column of ash 6 kilometers into the sky. Klyuchevskaya Sopka is pouring out lava flows that have already reached 3 kilometers in length and are approaching the region's largest glacier. But this is only the beginning. Some believe this is no longer just a local catastrophe. This is a potential trigger for the activation of the entire Pacific Ring of Fire. More than 1,000 volcanoes scattered across the Pacific Ocean could react to the Kamchatka impulse. Scientists are recording increased probability of eruptions along the entire 4,000 kilometers arc from Russia to Chile. More than 100 fire mountains are at risk. 1 billion people are under threat. Geologists speak directly. If even a dozen large volcanoes awaken simultaneously, the planet will plunge into volcanic winter for several years. But why is this happening right now? What consequences await Russia if lava flows melt Kamchatka's glaciers? And most importantly, can this trigger a domino effect throughout the entire Ring of Fire? On July 30th, 2025, residents of Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky woke up to the sounds of alarm clocks, not suspecting that in a couple of hours they would witness events that hadn't occurred on Earth for almost 3 centuries. At 7:10 a.m. local time, the planet's depths shuddered with such force that seismic waves circled the entire globe. But this was only the beginning. The earthquake became the 6th strongest in the history of human observations. Tsunamis up to 4-meter high crashed onto the Coral Islands. Tsunami waves even reached the shores of Japan, Hawaii, Chile, Ecuador, Peru, and Mexico. But then things got worse. The earthquake awakened what had been sleeping for centuries. Just a few hours after the main shock, something occurred that hadn't been seen for almost 300 years. One after another, Kamchatka's volcanoes began to awaken. First, Klyuchevskoye activated, the highest active volcano in Eurasia. Its peak was illuminated by the crimson glow of lava. Streams of molten magma flowed down its slopes, threatening to melt one of the region's largest glaciers. But Klyuchevskoye was only the first in this dangerous parade. On August 3rd, something incredible happened. Krasheninnikov volcano awakened, which had been silent since the 15th century. Lava had last erupted from its depths in 1463, when Ivan II still ruled Russia and America had not yet been discovered by Columbus. 600 years of oblivion ended with an explosion of ash to a height of 6 kilometers. Alexei Ozerov, director of the Institute of Volcanology and Seismology of the Russian Academy of Sciences, didn't hide his professional enthusiasm. Today we have witnessed an extremely rare phenomenon that I can call a parade of volcanic eruptions. According to our data, this last happened in 1737, when an earthquake of magnitude 9.0 occurred in Kamchatka. 7 volcanoes simultaneously. Besides Klyuchevskoye and Krasheninnikov, Avachinsky, Kozelsky, Bezimiany, Karimsky, and Mutnovsky became active. Some of them had slept for decades, others for centuries. But apparently the earthquake turned out to be the trigger that forced all these underground monsters to awaken. Mutnovsky Volcano, popular among tourists, is now strongly not recommended for visits. Satellite images have recorded a thermal anomaly, a sign that molten magma is boiling in its depths. Kozelsky, Kamchatka's southernmost volcano, has begun emitting an ominous rumble that can be heard for dozens of kilometers. Yuri Demyanchuk, head of the volcano station, with 50 years of experience working in Kamchatka, admits he hasn't seen such a massive volcanic eruption in half a century of work. But the most alarming thing is that this may be only the beginning. As we know, Kamchatka is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, a 4,000 kilometers chain of volcanoes and seismic zones that encircles the entire Pacific Ocean. Here, 75% of all the planet's active volcanoes are concentrated, and 90% of all the world's earthquakes occur. And now, scientists are debating whether this entire park of deadly natural forces will awaken. The Pacific Ring of Fire is not a poetic metaphor, but a very concrete geological reality that could turn into a nightmare for half of humanity. This chain of volcanoes and seismic zones encircles the Pacific Ocean, from Russia and Japan in the west to the western coast of the USA, and all the way to Antarctica. Here, 425 volcanoes are located, 3/4 of all the planet's active fire mountains. After the Kamchatka mega-earthquake, scientists around the world froze in anxious anticipation. Geologist Michael Manga from the University of California at Berkeley doesn't hide his concern. Volcanoes and volcanic arcs, including Chile, the USA, Japan, Indonesia, and Kamchatka, are prone to eruptions after earthquakes. The mechanism of this phenomenon is frighteningly simple. When tectonic plates suddenly shift with monstrous force, they release energy that spreads through the Earth's crust in the form of seismic waves. These waves can increase stress inside magmatic chambers at distances of 1,000 kilometers from the epicenter. Additional stress can weaken the rock surrounding the magma reservoir or open new paths for its rise to the surface. An even more ominous effect is that the shaking destroys gas bubbles inside the magma, making it more mobile and unstable. Imagine a champagne bottle that has been shaken for a long time. This is exactly how magma behaves in volcanic chambers after a powerful earthquake. Some scientists believe that seismic shock waves can spread from the earthquake epicenter for many hundreds and thousands of kilometers and shake volcanoes that are already close to eruption. The Kamchatka earthquake has already increased the probability of volcanic eruptions throughout the Ring of Fire to 12%. It would seem like little, but on a planetary scale, this means that the risk for hundreds of millions of people has increased many times over. The increased threat will persist from 2 months to 2 years. More than 100 volcanoes in Russia, Japan, the Philippines, and Indonesia are in the zone of greatest risk. These regions are already showing alarming signs. Increased activity has been recorded at Great Sitkin in Alaska. Hawaii's Kilauea volcano, which is already considered one of the world's most dangerous volcanoes, is also under close observation. But the most frightening and quite plausible forecasts concern the possibility of simultaneous eruption of several large volcanoes. If this happens, humanity will face a phenomenon that geologists call volcanic winter. Millions of tons of ash and sulfur thrown into the stratosphere will create a dense veil that will block solar rays and lead to global cooling. Historical analogies inspire horror. In 1815, the eruption of Tambora volcano in Indonesia led to the year without a summer. Temperature in the northern hemisphere dropped, causing crop failure and famine in Europe and North America. And that was when only one volcano erupted. What will happen if dozens of fire holes awaken simultaneously? Here, as scientists believe, Russia with its harsh climate will find itself in a particularly difficult position. The Far East may face 30-minute tsunamis that will sweep away coastal cities: Vladivostok, Sakhalin, the Kurils. All these territories are in the zone of direct threat. Scientists don't rule out that current events in Kamchatka may become the trigger for a much larger-scale catastrophe. And while the world watches the parade of volcanoes on the Russian peninsula, somewhere in the Earth's depths, new centers of stress are already forming. History has a frightening habit of repeating itself, and events in Kamchatka are vivid confirmation of this. Few know that in 1737, exactly 288 years ago, an earthquake of magnitude 9 occurred on the peninsula, which also awakened many volcanoes simultaneously. Then the great explorer Stepan Krasheninnikov, after whom one of the volcanoes now awakening is named, wrote, "The fire-breathing mountain was embraced by fire from top to bottom, and then, a little later, a thick cloud rose from it and went to the sea." The earthquake then continued until spring 1738. The dwellings of Kamchatka's indigenous inhabitants were seriously damaged. But what particularly alarms modern scientists are the amazing parallels between the events of the 18th century and what is happening now. Doctor of Seismic Sciences Alexander Vikolin predicted back in the 1990s that, in our time, Petropavlovsk would shake at a maximum of 8 points. And in 2058, plus or minus 10 years, a stronger earthquake up to 10 points would occur. The scientist based this on analogy with the 1737 cataclysm and the cyclical nature of seismic processes. Are his predictions beginning to come true? Currently in Kamchatka, dozens of aftershocks are recorded daily, repeated tremors after the main earthquake. In just the first few days, their number exceeded 680, with magnitudes from 3.5 to 6.5. These are not just echoes of the main shock. This is a sign that the peninsula's depths are in a state of extreme instability. Scientists are particularly alarmed by the fact that some earthquakes that were previously considered foreshocks have now been reclassified as aftershocks of the main event. On July 20th, 10 days before the 8.8 mega earthquake, a magnitude 7 shock occurred. Then specialists reassured the population, saying the worst was behind them. But this turned out to be just a harbinger of the real catastrophe. The problem is that distinguishing foreshocks from aftershocks is extremely difficult. Modern science can register events, but unfortunately cannot accurately predict them. Even high-tech Japan, where hundreds of laboratories track seismic activity, cannot warn the population several days in advance about an approaching earthquake. This is precisely why studying historical analogies is so important. Kamchatka is experiencing what is possibly the most dangerous phase in the last 300 years. And this is no exaggeration. Geological processes have their cycles that are measured in centuries. Daniil Chebrov from the Kamchatka branch of the Geophysical Service warns, "We were very lucky with the recent earthquake, which followed the best possible scenario, but there are no guarantees that we will be as lucky next time." Scientists are particularly alarmed by the behavior of Krasheninnikov volcano. Summit and flank eruptions began simultaneously on it. This may indicate strong earthquakes inside the volcano itself. Mysterious coincidences multiply. On the same day when Kamchatka volcanoes began activating, a magnitude 5.1 earthquake occurred off the coast of Myanmar. Formally, Myanmar is not part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, but the frightening synchronicity suggests that deep processes in the Earth's mantle affect much larger territories than previously thought. There's an interesting fact. For the world scientific community, events in Kamchatka have become a real gift of fate. The opportunity to observe the rarest geological processes in real time using the most modern technologies. Dozens of researchers have frozen at monitors, analyzing data streams coming from seismic stations, satellites, and underwater sensors. Modern observation capabilities fundamentally differ from those available during the earthquake in Japan in 2011 or in Kamchatka in 1952. Of particular interest is the subduction mechanism, the process by which one lithospheric plate crawls under another. This is precisely why earthquakes and volcanism in Kamchatka are two manifestations of one geological process. Satellite observations have revealed amazing details. Images show that Krasheninnikov's eruption began simultaneously from the summit crater and from a fissure on the slope. This is the rarest type of activity that indicates powerful deformations in the volcano's body. The ash plume stretched 75 kilometers to the east, and its height reached 6 kilometers above sea level. Thermal anomalies recorded at Mutnovsky volcano show a sharp temperature increase on its surface. This means magma has risen much closer to the surface than usual. Researchers are also paying special attention to the behavior of the lava flow at Kluchevskoye volcano. The flow has already reached 3 kilometers in length and is approaching Bogdanovich Glacier. If the molten lava reaches the glacier, catastrophic melting will occur, which could lead to the formation of lahars, mud flows consisting of water, volcanic ash, and rock debris. The only road connecting northern settlements of Kamchatka with Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky is under threat. If the lava flow melts Bogdanovich Glacier, the resulting lahars could wash away this vitally important transportation artery. For the region's residents, this would be a real catastrophe. They would be cut off from civilization for an indefinite time. International air traffic is also under threat. Although major transoceanic routes don't pass directly over Kamchatka, ash emissions can spread for hundreds of kilometers, but local problems pale before global threats. Geologists worldwide are anxiously following the development of events, understanding that Kamchatka could become the trigger for activation of the entire Pacific Ring of Fire. Indonesia looks particularly vulnerable, a country located at the junction of 4 tectonic plates. Here are such dangerous volcanoes as Krakatoa and Toba. The eruption of the latter nearly led to human extinction. Japanese volcanologists are also in a state of heightened readiness. Fujiyama, the country's sacred mountain, has shown signs of unrest in recent years. Any eruption of this volcano would be a catastrophe not only for Japan, but for the entire world economy. Scientists are trying to calculate the darkest scenarios. Simultaneous eruption of several large volcanoes could lead to volcanic winter lasting from 2 to 5 years. Volcanic activity in Kamchatka continues. New ash emissions are recorded daily. Lava flows continue moving down slopes, and seismic stations register hundreds of underground tremors. Scientists don't rule out that several more volcanoes may awaken in the coming months. Humanity has witnessed the rarest geological phenomenon, a parade of volcanoes that hasn't occurred for almost 3 centuries. This is a reminder that our planet remains unpredictable, capable of changing the usual course of history overnight. But the most amazing discovery concerns the synchronicity of processes. Scientists have discovered that activation of different volcanoes doesn't occur chaotically, but follows a certain sequence connected with the propagation of seismic waves from the earthquake epicenter. This confirms the theory that underground processes in Kamchatka represent a single interconnected system. That's all for now. If you liked this video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel.